AB-1127. Take it away.
Yeah. So AB-1127, that's California's latest assembly bill. It mostly this is it's caused a stir in the gun community, specifically relative to Glock. 1127 makes it doesn't go into effect until like mid 2026.
Yeah.
So the enforcement does not become effective until mid next year.
And then there's even a provision about testing, right? I don't know if you got into that.
Yeah, and so what 1127 does is it reclassifies striker-fired handguns that use a cruciform trigger bar as machine gun convertible, and that's a kind of long way of saying that Glock's trigger design, like the mechanical characteristics that are present in a Glock trigger, are being deemed too easy to convert to machine gun to be lawful for sale in California. It does not name Glock by brand, which is important. And it does not name any like specific models of Glock handguns or anything like that. It specifically takes issue with the trigger bar of Glock handguns, and it's like it's not necessarily the slimline models, but the traditional Glock guns, the 19s, the 17s, that type of thing. For any non like gun listeners or non Glock guys. Glock handguns, the trigger assembly has a design that's a little different from certain other manufacturers, and the trigger bar, the sear it has like a cruciform shaped, so it's shaped like a little T or like a little cross, and that's what catches like the striker, and it stops the gun from firing as a machine gun. It's very easy to override this with a Glock switch, which if anyone is like I am, a big fan of gangster rap involving pushing weight, I believe is the term. Anyone who's into gangster rap will understand the cultural significance of a Glock with the switch, which is that it takes a regular Glock off the shelf and you can convert it to a machine gun by purchasing a Glock switch off of wish.com and importing it directly from China through customs in California very easily. Alternatively, you can print one of these off with a 3D printer in your house for like a couple bucks, and then you're off to the races. So there's been a huge uptick in the cities that you might expect, where Glocks just get converted to machine guns because that's like the cool guy social status. Like if there is a Nissan Altima driving around in Chicago with illegal window tint, there's a very real chance that the Glock in the center console has an illegal switch on the back of it, which converts it to a machine gun. So this specific design of trigger is very easy to switch to a machine gun. It also happens to be a very good, very simple, very elegant trigger design that has worked well for decades. So California is saying, hey, look, this is too easy to turn into a machine gun. This specific design, this cruciform trigger bar on striker-fired handguns. And so in mid-2026, you will not be able to buy these new from dealers. They're still exempting private party transfers. They're still exempting there are certain conditions, like if it's a gunsmith repair, or if the gun has been like modified and approved by Cali DOJ and like tested so that it's not convertible. So there's like a very small section of carve-outs. But for the most part, this will mean that Glock's commercial lifespan is ended in California, which forces action from the manufacturer, because if Glock loses California, that puts them in a pretty difficult situation in terms of finances. Like California is a huge gun market, and Glock has handguns that are on the California approved roster, and so if they lose that, it's not going to be good. It's also made worse by the fact that this is not the only action being taken against Glock. Like Maryland, New Jersey, Chicago, like the city, like Cook County, these entities all have similar lawsuits against Glock for the same reason. Some of them have different pretense for their litigation. California is saying that it's machine gun convertible, and so it's an unusual weapon. But other places are coming from, like Maryland is coming from like a public nuisance standpoint. So is Chicago, and so these are court cases that have not been thrown out. Glock has sought to have these dismissed. There's a federal law that exempts gun manufacturers for liability of criminal misuse of their products. So in the same way that, like, if you, like, let's say you just got here from India and you drink 6 bottles of whiskey and drive your 18-wheeler into an orphanage, in the same way that you can't sue Mack Truck for that problem because it's not their fault, their vehicle was criminally misused. Gun manufacturers in general have protection from that under federal law. But this gets worked against in progressive states because there are carve-outs in the federal law that don't make it like 100% airtight. And so if you can make a state-level exemption saying that like certain models of handguns or certain manufacturers or certain designs contribute knowingly to misuse or public nuisance or that type of thing, or that their marketing contributes to that, then those exemptions go away. And so that's where like Chicago, that's where Maryland are coming from. And so Glock finds itself in a pretty difficult position because its legacy design, its standard trigger system, is kind of a victim of its own success, and that it works out so well that it has a super high degree of like market saturation. It's very popular. It's probably Glock brand is pretty consistently one of the, if not the most popular handguns that manufacturers out there. And so they are suddenly at risk of not being able to keep up with business as usual. Like if they spend $1 zillion fighting a dozen different lawsuits at the same time, there's still a very high chance that they're going to lose even just one of those, which would, be catastrophic to their operation. And so this is a very narrowly tailored, like attack surface that the anti-gun crowd is coming after, but it seems to be pretty well crafted. I mean, you could probably speak more to that than I could. But what you will see is design changes from Glock, and they announced this kind of against their will because Glock store kind of leaked it on their Instagram story. But you'll see this from the Glock. They're going to be called the V model Glocks. So there's large discontinuations of their legacy models, and they will be pivoting to the V model Glocks basically to work around 1127 and these other lawsuits from states and municipalities.
A few items that caught my interest. So yeah, you talk about products liability cases as an example, civil suit against a gun manufacturer or anybody. It's like, because you can turn a car into a weapon and anything. So the premise there is the product being used as it was designed to be used. And the guns that's why they have to have additional federal protection in a sense, was because, well, they are designed to shoot and kill, right? So, but legally or illegally. So that is somewhat of a distinction there. It also makes me wonder if it would be better for Glock to have this kind of issue where it forces them to change this design rather than a lawsuit, because this is not prospect. I mean, this is prospective. In other words, it's something that, okay, we'll change it and then it goes into effect and we can still sell guns. Whereas the other one would be, damages, and you can try to run them out of business if those lawsuits succeed. One question though is, and you can talk about those as well. So you mentioned other states. That's a good thing to know. Is it an effective method of actually turning it into a machine gun? And what made me think of this was, the bump stocks, right? We had what, Cargill versus Garland, or Garland v. Cargill, where the bump stock went in there because
Yeah.
yeah, they were
Yeah.
changing the rules, and they basically, with Thomas's ruling, said each motion still had to be a separate action, so therefore it was not a machine gun. Is that applicable to this at all? Or is this
No,
gun
this,
when you
this is
put
a
this trigger?
true. Yeah, this
True.
is a true machine gun.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not like a workaround
Okay.
like the bump stock thing is, or like the binary triggers or anything like that. Like this, it just keeps the sear depressed, and it just runs as long as you press the trigger down.
Okay, so it's legit machine gun style. Have the Latino gangs taken a liking to this, or is it just ones driving the Maximas?
As far as I know, it's all of them. Yeah, yeah.
So what is your thought as far as like a lawsuit versus this law? I mean, you made one comment there, and this isn't my angle of law, but first thing I'm thinking of is this law seems to be specific to just one person. Now it's one company, right? So maybe there's an equal protection claim against it. But what do you think about the future of this, and or a lawsuit versus this law?
Yeah. So in the case of 1127. They're very, very narrowly tailoring this to focus on the cruciform trigger bar, and 1127 also, in writing, exempts other types of handguns. So like hammer-fired pistols, it just says this just doesn't apply to hammer-fired pistols. It also says it doesn't apply to other striker-fired guns that don't have a cruciform trigger bar. And so, and they're very careful not to name Glock in this. Now, Glock is not strictly speaking, they're not the only company that this would necessarily apply to. All of the Glock clones that are compatible with Gen 3 Glock triggers, of which there's no shortage out in the commercial market. There's a number of different companies that you can drop a Gen 3 Glock trigger into. Like Shadow Systems ships with the Glock trigger, of course. The PSA daggers, the Ruger RXMs. So there's a bunch of like Glock clone frames and stuff that you can buy. So this is obviously designed to target Glock, but there will be some bycatch with it that I'm not sure how that would factor in as far as any consideration of like equal protection. But I think they're very, very specific about the mechanical characteristics that they are targeting in AB 1127, and I think the thinking behind that is like, hey, we don't want this to fall victim to like. They have to show that this is like an unusual weapon, right? Like you have the Heller decision, which made the common use standard, where they basically said, hey, look, you don't like individual gun ownership is a personal right. You don't have to be affiliated with a militia, because historically you would have access to any commonly used, firearm, and so common use is a factor when it comes to like legal scrutiny with firearm access. And so there's no question that like Glocks are commonly used, because since these have been for decades now extremely popular for civilian ownership, for law enforcement agency use. Like if you stumble upon a random handgun in America, there's like a pretty good chance it's going to be a Glock. So there's no question that it's a commonly used handgun, but the trigger design on the Glock is reasonably unique to Glock, and so California has to show that like this is a unusual weapon, like it's an uncommon, it's uncommonly dangerous relative to other handgun designs, in order to avoid running afoul of the Heller decision or of the Bruin decision. So they can't, and it's not like it's not a confiscation ban. Like they're not saying, okay, if you have a Glock, you have to turn it in or something like that. They're not doing any type of buyback or NFA like fuckery or anything like that. So it's like it's just like the lightest touch possible. It's like, yeah, if your trigger bar has a cruciform design, that's just too easy to turn into a machine gun. And you know, semantically, they're right. Like a Glock, you know, is very easy to turn into a machine gun, and it is incredibly popular. Like it is true that there have been like exploding numbers of illegally modified Glocks recovered from crime scenes in places like California or Baltimore, Maryland, or Chicago, Illinois. So, like the argument is not frivolous. Like there is like a public safety consideration like that is bona fide. Now, how I would approach that, I obviously disagree with the gun control sentiment here. Like I would just say, just send people to jail if they, you know, you know, like it's pretty easy to me. It's like, yeah, I mean, I don't know if you're at fucking high school with a Glock with a switch in your bag in gym class, then maybe you should go to jail. Like, you know, that is to me the preferred approach. But it is true, like there is a legitimately large uptick in criminal activity with this specific type of modification. And you know, everyone's going to hear that and go, oh, this guy fucking hates the Second Amendment. What the fuck, you know? But you do have to admit the reality of the situation. Like that is the reality of it. And so if you're a court and you have to examine this based on the merits of the case, like they're not bullshitting when they say that this is a real problem for law enforcement, because it actually is. And so I think Glock just saying, yeah, fine, guess what, we're just going to do a redesign, is probably the smartest way to approach it, right? Like the odds of winning one lawsuit are not guaranteed, let alone winning a dozen of them. And because this case, like the 1127, because this is very narrowly tailored to not run afoul of like Heller or Bruin, you're not necessarily going to win that one free and clear in a higher court either. And so it will be faster and cheaper to make some type of basic change to the design of your trigger mechanism, and just, you know, keep doing business and basically nullify everything that's in the pipeline with this, than it will be to, you know, shed $1 billion in, you know, civil fines and legal fees and, you know, fucking go bankrupt.
Yeah, and so get yours now. It kind of is what you're saying. And by the way, so if they change the design, and you know, just so you know, people out there, it's not an admission of guilt. So if you have a broken step as an example, and you fix it, and someone had tripped, it doesn't mean that you are admitting guilt. You're taking remedies you got to do to make sure something doesn't happen again. And it wouldn't necessarily be used against them in those other cases. Plus, if it would be, they could just say, hey, there's this law here in California. We've decided it's a big market. We're just deciding to make changes completely for that. So, so that'll be interesting. I personally would like to see, for something like that they at least, or someone bring, and it'd have to be them, I guess, because they're that have standing, bring a case against California just to see what would happen. Now, you know, for once, California writes a law, whether we like it or not, that was, as you said, narrowly tailored to actually fit these cases, Heller and Bruin, that are, you know, basically the ruling on this. So, because typically they'll just write shit out here. You know, I'm in California, so it's crazy time out here. But that's interesting. Any predictions? I did want to play this clip here. Let's go here. This is I don't know if you care about these people or not. This is let's see if I could find this here. Sorry. Okay, this is Brandon Herrera making a comment about this with Josie. So let's play this here.
From what I've been able to figure out is because of all the lawsuits from like multiple different states, is Glock is now apparently pulling their Gen 5 line, and they're only doing like the Glock V thing. I think that's what the what the designation that they're giving it, but basically it just has a denial for the switches, which, in my opinion, a semi-automatic weapon is just a machine gun that's broken and wanting to be fixed. There's just going to be a different type of switch. Like, it's not going to work on any of the off the street, like fucking wish.com fed trap switches. But like, I'll put it on the line. I'll put $100 cash on the line that if we get our hands on the new Glock Model V, within 2 weeks, we can build a switch for it. We can convert it full auto. Like, it's not fucking hard. Pretty much any semi-auto can be converted to a full auto with enough time and a Dremel.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so what do you think about that? First of all, is that a little too fetty, or what do you think of that?
No, I mean, I think he's pretty good chance of being correct. Now, the Glock design, I mean, it is very easy to convert, and other designs are less so. And, you know, to my awareness, Glock hasn't released any type of schematic or anything for the V model trigger changes. So, you know, we'll wait and see what that looks like. However, you know, my guess is that he's probably right, especially because this is going to be taken as a challenge by everyone who has, you know, access to a 3D printer and CAD software. Like this, this is basically like putting up the bat signal for every single guy who has Asperger's syndrome in a 3D printer, that he's like, someone's going to figure out how to defeat the V model immediately, and that's fine. That's okay, like, because that, one, like, cool, good. Two, it probably won't matter as far as Glock is concerned. You know, I think, like, I don't, you know, I don't work for Glock, so I'm not speaking for them or anything. I would assume that these changes are designed so that they can, you know, get out of this situation that they're in terms of lawfare. They need to be able to take all these lawsuits and laws like AB-1127 and basically just sidestep them. So in the same way that Glock is going to, you know, engineer a small workaround so that everything else here is nullified, you know, a week later, some guy in his garage, like you know, Mr. Herrera said, someone with a Dremel tool and a set of calipers is going to figure out a way to defeat this. And so, and that's fine, because it, you know, that will still be a win for Glock, and it will still be a win for the broader home gunsmithing community. So, you know, I think he's probably correct, but we'll see. It is not as easy with other designs. It's not, you know, there's a reason that there's not like a switch for every brand that's out there.
So you make a question comes to mind, which is, and I don't know this part of the law very well. So what about the ease of being it? Because it's like, hey, anything can be done with these. Okay, well, if any time you can convert this, and it just maybe a Dremel tool, or you just get a little switch, is the problem that how easy it is, or the fact that it can be done? Because if it can be done, then it's always going to be done.
The ease is Glock's problem from a legal standpoint, because that's where they're getting around PLCAA. Like PLC, that's the Protection for Lawful Commerce and Arms Act. That's what says gun manufacturers, you know, don't have to worry about criminal misuse of their product. However, if your product is, like, you know, conspicuously simple to turn into a machine gun, and yours is largely the only product that's in its, you know, class that's like that, and it has been brought to your attention, and you can continue marketing your product without any changes, like, that's the public nuisance angle that you know, Maryland and Cook County and things like that are able to play. And so, yeah, like, the ease of which the like standard, like, Gen 3 Glock 19 or 17 can be converted into a machine gun, it is much easier than it is to, like, convert, like, a Browning high power to a machine gun or something like that. Both of those things can be done, but one of them is done rarely and one of them is done all over the place.
Is there any case law or just anything that would say, because this sounds very subjective. So what's easy or minimal? Is there anything that
Yeah, the
standard
the
for
ATF the ATF is always really squirrely about this, and they always
that? Yeah,
they always
probably
issue
intentionally.
yeah, they always issue very subjective guidance where they say that it's like reasonably easy or reasonably simple to convert or something like that. And if you ask them what it means, they come up with nothing. They recently did this with like 80% lowers, where they tried to reclassify unfinished blocks of aluminum as firearm receivers, with the argument that it's reasonably simple to convert. It's like, yeah, if you have access to like a vise, a metal cutting router, like it's not that easy, right? Like it's not as easy as like changing the chain on a bicycle or something. Like, but they will issue very subjective guidance that where they just say, well, if we think it's easy, then boom, that's a firearm, or boom, that's a machine gun, or boom, that's a illegal suppressor or something like that. And because it's a game of chicken, because it's like, look, man, the only way to get them to really give you an answer is to let them do a pre-dawn raid on your house. And then you will go bankrupt and you will spend the next 3 years in court losing all of your money and friends and leaving it into the hands of like an in-bank panel of a California circuit. And so it's just not a good risk. They just say like, hey, if this is too easy, we're going to say it's too easy. And if you feel froggy, then you can jump. That's kind of the implicit use of force that they rely on.
I had a client that he came to me. He was in prison, federal prison, and I was dealing with his divorce. But he was there because he had a machine shop, and he was, 80%. He was doing too much, and they caught him for that. So he spent some time. Last thing we'll go to is, and we'll just knock it out real quick here. You had written also a piece about open carry in Florida. There was a new ruling there. One thing I would say that I found interesting, just kind of looking through this, is the 14th Amendment and substantive due process. There's all these. They have different tiers of scrutiny, and fundamental rights are what you consider, First Amendment and whatnot. Second Amendment is not considered a fundamental right, so therefore they don't use heightened scrutiny. They only use intermediate scrutiny, and then that got overturned with Bruin. And I thought you wrote, people I would suggest to go there to NBlock Press and read about that. It's puts out there in a nice, easy way to learn about that. But Bruin has changed some things here, and this is one. I've only seen what I think is positive aspects from Bruin coming down the pike as far as changing laws. So what's your thought on, first of all, Bruin's changes and then the open carry status that you guys have there in Florida?
Yeah, I think Bruin has been a win. That's definitely, I think pretty much all upside. Even the only times I've seen people try to work against it is you'll get like some shit lib judge. When it comes to like illegal aliens who get caught with guns, they'll say, well, historically there's been no law against this. And so,
did you look into that case, by the way? The one in Chicago? I think it was Chicago.
Yeah, initially, but not recently.
Because I did, and I didn't have a problem with that ruling. First of all, the guy got a gun. Now they said illegally because he was concerned about the BLM riots. I'm like, this is one of our guys. So anyway, continue on.
Yeah, that's the only, basically the only argument where I've seen, anything kind of squirrely with it. But otherwise, between Bruin and Heller, these are, I mean, they're a decade apart, but it's pretty much back-to-back wins. People like to black pill about politics, but one of the few areas where there are consistent wins is two-way stuff. Like there are more states than ever that have like constitutional carry, open carry. I mean, things obviously aren't perfect. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done. There's still states with like assault weapons bans and things like that. But overall, gun cases, like if you're gonna win on like a right wing issue, guns are the place to be, because that's and not just in like the Trump years, but I mean spanning decades. Like this, it's had it's one of the few things in I hate to use the term conservative, but it's like one of the few things in conservative politics that's actually had better outcomes over time instead of worse outcomes. So Bruin and Heller is emblematic of that. And so I think it's been good. The open carry in Florida, that's cool. Open carry, that's fine. We'll see. Florida's a wild place. So.
By the way, so yes, we're all, you like the 2A, less restriction, but then there is that, I don't know about cringe, but it's the LARPing type, right? Well, I'm going to do it because I can. And, what do you what's your thought there?
Yeah. Like I do not open carry, in the same way. Like, I don't know, man. I agree with you. It can be cringe. Not all the time. Like obviously rule number one is always look cool, right? But a lot of people who are going to be doing open carry for probably the first time in their lives, they don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
Right. And so you're going to be, and there are, guys who are fat wearing like Uncle Mike's holsters, like no retention, no gun belt, with like
or the bandoleros across the.
Yeah. It's just, if you're going to do it, you got to look cool. That's like a prereq. And so there are a lot of people who don't know how to do that, but my hope is that they can get there. I'm an optimist. I'm a romantic. I think they could eventually learn how to look cool when they're open carrying. At least that's my hope. But yeah, you're right. It is entirely possible to do this in a cringe manner. And from the limited amount of open carry that I've seen so far, that is largely what's going on.
Well, that's interesting. I grew up in the Northwest, and gun racks in the back of people's trucks was commonplace. So yeah, make it cool. I mean, I don't know if that was cool, your can of skull and your gun rack and whatnot, but make it cool again.
Yeah, the gun rack is cool. Like having a rifle in the window of your pickup truck.
Yeah.
That is an American aesthetic. Like that is cool. I would really love to see that make a comeback. Like they don't make trucks that are cool enough at this point usually to warrant that type of aesthetic. But I don't think it's cool. Like if your holster is made out of nylon, it's not cool. If your gun, like if this is made in like Brazil or Turkey, it's not cool.
This is your next post. You need help us out. Make a post about cool, not cool, some categories, all that stuff. I think that's.
Yeah, I probably need to, because there's just people don't know how to actually do this, and so it's usually just like a sweaty fat guy with like his pants sagging down because he doesn't know about gun belts or retention holsters, and yeah, I probably should get on that.
Yeah, you get on that.